She had plans that day, a shopping trip with her mother, 12:30 p.m. Sherry Elliott had been looking forward to it all week. 12:30 came, then 1, then 2. Kim had never once missed a plan without calling, not in 16 years. So when the afternoon kept disappearing and the phone stayed silent, Sherry didn't look for easy explanations. She grabbed her keys and started driving. She had no idea that drive would never really end. That morning had started with 0 warning signs. January 26, 1979. Western High School was holding registration day. Students came in, picked their classes for the next semester, and drifted home. Kim Bryant, a 16-year-old sophomore, finished her registration and crossed Decatur Boulevard with a friend toward the Dairy Queen directly across from the school's football field. The restaurant wasn't open yet, but the parking lot had turned into a loose gathering spot. Teenagers killing time in the thin January morning air, talking about nothing in particular. Kim was relaxed, the kind of relaxed you only are when you have absolutely no reason to be afraid. Then a car slowed down. Late 1950s Chevy. Silver gray primer, raw, uneven. The kind that tells you a repair job started and was never finished. Raised back wheels. 2 young men inside. They didn't stop to ask directions. The moment that Chevy rolled up, the comments started, loud, aimed directly at the girls in the lot. Kim and her friend weren't the type to stay quiet. They fired back. Now here is the detail that most retellings skip over entirely. Those 2 men didn't laugh it off. They didn't shrug. Witnesses would later tell police that when the girls refused to engage on their terms, the men went quiet. Not embarrassed quiet. Cold quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't mean the moment is over. It means something is being decided. The Chevy sped away into southbound Decatur traffic. Kim watched it go. Behind her, the noise of the parking lot carried on like nothing had happened. Traffic rolling past, teenagers drifting toward the road, the ordinary sounds of a Saturday morning in Las Vegas swallowing everything whole. She thought nothing more of it. A few minutes later, a friend's mother arrived to pick up her daughter. She offered Kim a ride home. Kim held up one finger. "Give me a second." She walked to a nearby payphone. Through the receiver, she could hear the steady roar of Decatur Boulevard. Engines, the hiss of passing cars, the kind of background noise that makes you press the phone harder against your ear. She called her boyfriend, asked him to come get her. He said he was on his way. She hung up, walked back, thanked her friend's mother and said she was fine. Her friend's mother drove away. The parking lot slowly emptied around Kim, one car at a time, one group of teenagers at a time, until she was standing there alone on the edge of one of the busiest roads in Las Vegas, waiting. That payphone call was the last time anyone who loved Kim Bryant heard her voice. Her boyfriend was 35 minutes away. Those 35 minutes were not just time. They were the distance between Kim Bryant coming home and never coming home at all. And somewhere in those 35 minutes, on a road that thousands of people drove past that morning, something happened that nobody saw. At 10:45 a.m., her boyfriend pulled into the parking lot. Empty. She was gone. He waited a few minutes, assumed she had caught a ride with someone else, left. That assumption, completely reasonable, completely human, meant no one would look for Kim for another 7 hours. By 5:30 that evening, Sherry and her husband walked into the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. They told the officer everything, never missed plans, never left without calling. Something was wrong. The officer listened. Then he asked about the argument, a normal, forgettable parent-teenager fight from the night before, and in that moment, without anyone saying it out loud, the case quietly closed before it ever opened. Runaway. Give it a few days. Check with her friends. What happened next is the part that deserves to make you angry. Detectives visited the house, searched Kim's room, found her diary. Inside it, entries written the way a frustrated teenager writes, raw, unfiltered, the kind of words you put down when you need somewhere to put them, wanting to leave, wanting things to be different. The kind of sentence that any 16-year-old with a bad week might write at 11 p.m. and forget by morning. Police read those words and saw confirmation of what they had already decided. What they didn't look for, what never made it into the file, was the other side of Kim Bryant. Every weekend, this same girl who wrote angry entries in a diary showed up to volunteer with Special Olympics. Consistently, reliably, she was counted on by kids who needed her. That version of Kim didn't fit the narrative already forming in that police station. So that version of Kim was quietly set aside. One diary, One fight, one tired assumption, and a 5-day head start for the man who had already taken her. Because on the same day Kim vanished, a motorist driving along Decatur near Charleston saw something in the road median, a backpack, sitting there like it had been thrown from a moving car. He pulled over, opened it, textbooks, gym clothes, a purse, and inside the purse a driver's license with the name Kim Bryant on it. He tried calling the number on file, no answer. The family was already out driving every street in Las Vegas looking. He moved on. In 1979, finding a lost bag and trying to return it directly was the natural thing to do. He had no idea a girl was missing because nobody had told anyone a girl was missing. That backpack sat in a 5-day silence that gave the killer a head start no investigation could ever fully recover. On January 31st, the motorist's information finally reached detectives, and the moment they heard what was inside that bag, something shifted in the room. You don't throw your own backpack onto the median of a busy road when you choose to run away. You don't leave your ID and your school books in the street. Only then, 5 days after Kim disappeared, did Las Vegas police officially open a real investigation. 5 days. The diary had cost Kim Bryant 5 days. And while detectives were still reading her private thoughts, looking for a runaway who was never a runaway, someone had been driving her further and further from everything she had ever known. Her mother would search for the truth for the rest of her life. She would die before she found it. Kim's body would be found 25 days later. But what investigators discovered at that crime scene didn't just confirm a murder, it revealed something far more disturbing. Kim hadn't died the day she disappeared. She had been kept alive for 4 days, and nobody, not one person, knew where she was. They were just kids with BB guns on a Saturday morning, February 20, 1979. 3 boys, a stretch of empty desert land near Buffalo Avenue and Charleston Boulevard, 4 miles from Western High School. Kind of place where the city noise fades into a thin, dry silence, broken only by the occasional pop of a BB gun and the crunch of boots on hard dirt. Cold February air, the smell of scrub brush and dust. Just boys being boys the way boys are supposed to be. One of them stopped. Something was on the ground ahead, tangled and half buried under rocks and debris. From a distance, through the pale morning light, it looked like a wig, the kind that gets blown off and forgotten. They moved closer the way curious kids always do, BB guns still in their hands, boots scuffing the dirt. Then the silence of that desert became a different kind of silence entirely. They ran to the nearest road, flagged down a passing police car. Their hands were shaking. They were children. They should never have had to see what they saw that morning. When investigators arrived at the scene, what they found told a story no one wanted to read. Kim Bryant was discovered in a state that suggested a targeted and violent assault. And she had been covered, deliberately, with rocks, dirt, and whatever loose debris the desert floor could offer. Not buried, not disposed of with any care or urgency, just covered, just hidden enough to buy a little more time. That detail matters more than it might seem. This was not panic. This was not someone who lost control and fled in a rush. This was someone who stood over Kim Bryant in the middle of the Las Vegas desert with enough composure and enough time and made a calculated decision to conceal what he had done. Then he walked away. The rabbit fur coat Kim had been wearing the morning she vanished was still nearby. That was how they confirmed who she was. The medical examiner confirmed she had suffered severe physical trauma, fought bravely against her attacker, and ultimately succumbed to her injuries. Kim Bryant had not been killed the day she disappeared. She had been kept alive for up to 4 days. 4 days, while her mother was driving the streets of Las Vegas, while police were reading her diary, while her boyfriend was assuming she had caught a ride with someone else. While the city moved through its ordinary week, Kim was still alive somewhere, in some location that was never identified, with someone whose name nobody knew. What happened during those 4 days? That question sat unanswered for 42 years. Not because investigators didn't try, but because the answer was buried somewhere only the killer knew, and the killer never said a word. Las Vegas grieved. Hundreds came to say goodbye to a 16-year-old girl they had never met. Former Nevada Governor Michael Callahan, a family friend, stood among the mourners. For a few weeks, Kim's name was in every newspaper. Tips flooded the police department. The community was paying attention in the way communities do when something this terrible breaks through the noise. But between January and March of 1979, Las Vegas recorded 25 homicides. 25. The same investigators working Kim's case were the same men working every other file that landed on their desks that winter. Commander Erica Cooper said it plainly. When you have that few investigators, you deal with the murders that are fresh. You cannot let a crime scene grow old while you chase a cold one. So Kim's file moved to the back, not abandoned, just outrun by the city it lived in. And somewhere in Las Vegas, the man who had covered her with rocks went back to his ordinary life. Then, in the summer of 1979, a local newspaper ran a deep feature on the case. What had been lost? What was still unknown? And that article did something no police bulletin had managed to do. It surfaced two witnesses nobody had spoken to yet. Two of Kim's classmates came forward, separately. They had never connected what they remembered to Kim's disappearance until they read that article. In the same week Kim vanished, they said, two men in a 1955 to 1957 Chevy had pulled up beside them, silver primer paint, Nevada plates, raised back wheels. The men smiled and offered to sell them jewelry. "Come take a look," they said. "It's right here in the car." The girls looked. There was no jewelry. There was no box, no bag, no item of any kind that suggested a sale. There was only a large walnut-grain speaker sitting alone in the back seat. The false promise dissolved instantly into something colder. The realization that the jewelry had never existed, that the offer had never been real, that the only thing these men actually wanted was for two teenage girls to get inside that car. The girls walked away. The men drove off shouting. Both girls independently described the passenger. Detective Bob Hilliard sat with their accounts and built the first composite sketch this investigation had ever produced. Shaggy blonde hair, 18 or 19 years old, and eyes, as one of the girls put it, that were droopy, heavy-lidded. The kind of eyes that don't look at you like a person. They look at you like a problem being solved. That sketch went public. Tips came in, then stopped. Not a single one produced a name. Kim's mother wrote a letter to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. She didn't write about evidence. She didn't write about suspects. She wrote about the small, ordinary things that grief takes from you, the things nobody warned you about when your child doesn't come home. "I cannot shop for her birthday presents. I cannot have a cake made for her. There will be no party with her smiling face." Then she wrote one more line, the kind of line a mother writes at midnight when the house is quiet and the weight of not knowing becomes too heavy to carry alone. I know it sounds stupid, but on Kim's birthday I would give anything if I could say to her, "Rest now, baby. They have caught those who hurt you so bad and took you away from us." She wrote that in 1979. She was still waiting in 2021. But just as Kim's case seemed destined to go cold forever, a man sitting in a jail cell decided to talk. He said he knew exactly who had killed Kim Bryant. He said the man had confessed everything to him, the abduction, the desert, all of it. And in exchange for that information, he wanted something from prosecutors. It seemed like the breakthrough the case had been waiting for. It wasn't. The confession that followed would redirect this investigation for the next decade toward the wrong man, down the wrong road, while the real killer kept living his quiet life just miles away. In early 1980, Kim's father got a call. Police had a lead, a real one this time. A man sitting in a jail cell was talking, and what he was saying pointed directly at Kim's case. After more than a year of silence, it finally seemed like the investigation was about to crack open. It wasn't. It was about to waste the next decade. The man's name was Ronnie Lee Fain. Fain had spent most of his life moving in and out of the California prison system before landing in Las Vegas in 1978. In early 1980, he was arrested for the murder of a local roofer named Bobby Gin Thomas, 36 stab wounds, body dumped near Hoover Dam. Gruesome, personal, the kind of killing that tells you the man holding the knife had a lot of rage and a lot of time. From his jail cell, Fain contacted prosecutors. He had information, he said, about Kim Bryant, about what really happened that January morning. In exchange, he wanted a deal. Police listened, and what Fain told them seemed, at first, to fit. He said Bobby Gin Thomas had confessed to him, drunk, boastful, about abducting and killing a teenage girl. Fain said he was so disgusted by what Thomas described that he killed him on the spot as an act of justice. A jailhouse avenger with a conscience. A case wrapped up and handed over. Except the story had holes, and the holes didn't close the more you looked at them. Here is the first problem. In Fain's original confession, he never once used the name Kim Bryant. Not once. He talked about a teenage girl, generic, vague, kind of language that could describe any of a dozen open cases. It was only after Fain's attorney mentioned Kim Bryant's name during legal proceedings that Kim Bryant appeared in Fain's account. Think about what that means. A man claiming to have killed someone out of outrage over a specific crime, and he didn't know the victim's name until his lawyer said it out loud. The second problem was Bobby Ginn Thomas himself. Thomas was not an innocent man who stumbled into Fain's story. He had a history that made him a credible suspect on paper, which is exactly what made Fain's confession so dangerous. In 1970, Thomas had assaulted a woman on the Las Vegas Strip. In January 1972, he drugged and assaulted his own 14-year-old sister-in-law. She died. He pleaded down, served a portion of his sentence, and walked out on parole. Around the time of Kim's murder, he had attempted another assault on a woman in the same desert area where Kim's body was found. Thomas was a predator with geography, history, and opportunity. He fit. But fitting is not the same as being guilty, and with Thomas already dead, killed by Fain before anyone could question him, there was no way to push further. The lead detective, Bob Hilliard, had serious doubts. The beer bottle Fain identified near the crime scene was found 70 yards from Kim's body and appeared to have been there long before her remains. Nothing Fain described was information that hadn't already been reported publicly. Fain got his plea deal. Thomas was dead, and Kim's case moved into a quiet, unresolved corner of the files. But it didn't stay quiet for long. By the mid-1980s, a new name entered the investigation, and this one came with FBI involvement. Stephen Peter Morin. Morin was a genuine monster, a serial killer who had been moving across the country under a series of false identities, leaving bodies in multiple states. He had arrived in Las Vegas from San Francisco in 1977 under the alias Robert Island, later adopting the name Robert Generoso after finding a deceased man with a similar age and appearance. He married a local school teacher named Sylvia, moved into a middle-class neighborhood on the western side of the city, less than 10 minutes from where Kim's body had been found. When investigators searched his property, they found a McCrane belt, the same style Kim had been wearing the morning she disappeared. Morin's wife told police about a broken lighter he had brought home around the time of Kim's murder. Kim's family confirmed she had carried one. A male friend Kim had mentioned, someone named Joe who had taken her skating at a rink on Valley View Boulevard, matched the description of Morin's vehicle. Kim's ex-boyfriend looked at a photo and identified Morin as the man present that night. On paper, Morin looked like the answer. He wasn't. In March 1985, Stephen Peter Morin was executed by lethal injection in a Texas prison for murders committed in other states. Before he died, detectives from Las Vegas traveled to Texas to interview him directly about Kim Bryant. Morin refused to discuss Las Vegas. Not once, not a single detail. He went to his death without saying a word about it. And here is where Edward Elliott, Kim's father, did something that deserves to be remembered. When police told the family that Morin was likely the man responsible, that the killer was dead, that they could have some measure of closure, Edward didn't accept it. He couldn't explain exactly why. It was not a logical objection backed by evidence. It was something quieter and more stubborn than logic. He just knew it wasn't right. The family was told by police that the killer had been executed in Texas, Elliott said years later. We never believed it. He was right, and it would take 36 more years to prove it. The 1980s became the 1990s. Kim's mother, Sherry, kept writing to the police department. Updates, questions, requests. The annual ritual of a mother who refused to let a file stay closed. The letters kept coming even as the lead stopped. Then DNA technology arrived. In 2008, investigators finally tested the biological evidence preserved from Kim's autopsy. For the first time, there was a real possibility, a scientific one, that the case could be solved without a witness, without a confession, without anyone coming forward. The test came back with nothing. The sample was too degraded. No profile could be built. It was like standing at a door, finally holding the right key and finding out the lock had changed. LVMPD had over 100 cold case homicides sitting in its files with DNA profiles and no CODIS matches, 100 cases, 100 families. 100 killers living free because the database didn't contain their names. Kim's unknown suspect was one of them, invisible inside a system built specifically to find people like him. And while police chased Texas serial killers and jailhouse confessions and DNA databases that kept returning empty, the real killer was in Las Vegas. Not hiding, not running, not looking over his shoulder. He had a wife. He had children. In 1990, he placed a classified advertisement in a Las Vegas newspaper offering his plastering and contracting services to anyone who needed work done. While Kim's mother was writing letters asking for answers, the man who took her daughter was advertising his phone number in the local paper. That is not a twist. That is 42 years of bitter, unrelenting irony. Then, in November 2020, a man named Justin Wu made a phone call. Wu was a Las Vegas entrepreneur and philanthropist, the founder of a nonprofit called Vegas Helps. He had been following the work of a small private DNA laboratory in Texas called Othram, and he wanted to do something concrete for his city. He offered $5,000, no conditions, no specific case, just pick a Las Vegas cold case and see what science can do. Police had already used that same offer, that same lab, to solve the 1989 murder of 14-year-old Stephanie Isaacson 4 months earlier. One donation, one case, one family that finally got a name after 32 years. We've covered the Stephanie Isaacson case in a previous video. Make sure to watch it after this. You'll find the link in the description. Now detectives opened Kim Bryant's file and asked the same question. What if we try again? In January 2021, a tiny evidence sample, preserved in an LVMPD vault for 42 years, was packaged and sent to a lab in Texas. What came back 10 months later would finally put a name to the face that had never appeared in a single police file. But that name would not bring only answers. It would open another door. Behind it, another victim, and behind that, 5 more. In January 2021, a small evidence package left Las Vegas and arrived at a private laboratory in the Woodlands, Texas. Inside, it was a biological sample, preserved since 1979, pulled from an evidence vault where it had been sitting for 42 years, waiting for a technology that didn't exist yet when Kim Bryant was alive. The scientists at Othram Inc. opened that package and went to work. Nobody announced it. Nobody held a press conference. There was no dramatic moment. Just quiet, methodical science applied to something that had defeated every other approach for 4 decades. That is what justice actually looks like most of the time. Not loud, not fast, just patient. The process Othram used is called forensic-grade genome sequencing. Here is what that means. In plain terms, they took the DNA from that sample and built a profile using not just a handful of genetic markers, but tens of thousands of them. Enough markers to create something far more detailed than anything a standard database search could use. Then they uploaded that profile to genealogy databases, GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, their own platform called DNA Solves, and started searching for people who shared portions of that DNA. Not the killer directly. His DNA wasn't in any system, but his relatives were. Distant cousins, second cousins, people who had submitted their own DNA to ancestry websites without knowing their family tree contained a murderer. The Othram genealogy team found those distant connections and then, slowly, carefully, the way you assemble a puzzle by sorting the edge pieces first, they worked backward, built the family tree outward, cross-referenced public records, birth certificates, obituaries, narrowed the circle. Then they handed their findings to investigators in Las Vegas and said, "Here, start here." Detectives worked the leads. They found a local relative willing to submit a voluntary DNA sample. That sample confirmed the familial connection. And on November 19, 2021, 10 days before the press conference, a phone rang at LVMPD. The name on the other end was Johnny Blake Peterson. Johnny Blake Peterson, born September 12, 1960, Las Vegas, Nevada. He had attended Western High School, the same school Kim Bryant was registered at, the same hallways, the same building. He had graduated and gone to work as a freelance plasterer. He got married, had 2 children, lived on the western side of Las Vegas, the same side of the city where Kim was taken, where her body was found, where he had grown up knowing every road and every stretch of open desert. For 42 years, that name had never appeared in a single police file connected to Kim Bryant, not once. While detectives chased jailhouse confessions and serial killers and DNA databases that returned nothing, Peterson was here, in this city, living this ordinary life. His name was in the phone book. His face was known to his neighbors. In 1990, he placed a classified advertisement in a Las Vegas newspaper offering plastering and contracting services. Kim Bryant's time stopped at 16. Peterson watched 14 more years of sunrises after he killed her. But here is the detail that should make every person watching this feel a cold, specific anger. In April 1980, 14 months after Kim's murder, Peterson was arrested for a serious criminal assault in Las Vegas. The case was dismissed. Insufficient evidence. He walked out, free, completely free. Humble. His DNA was not collected. His name went into no database, no flag was raised, no connection was made to the unsolved murder of a 16-year-old girl from the year before. If that case had been prosecuted properly, if his DNA had been collected and preserved the way it should have been, Diana Hansen might have gone jogging in December 1983 and come home. The 5 other cold cases now under investigation might never have happened. A 1980 rape charge that disappeared into a paperwork dismissal may have cost multiple women their lives. That is not speculation. That is the straight, unbroken line between a system that failed and the bodies that followed. Peterson died on January 20, 1993. Drug overdose. University Medical Center of Southern Nevada. He was 32 years old. He died without ever being questioned about Kim Bryant, without ever sitting in a courtroom, without ever having to look at her father across a room and explain what he did in that desert. He took the easy way out, not by choice, but by timing. Science simply wasn't ready for him yet. He outlasted the technology of his era and then ran out of time before the next era caught up. He went to his grave believing he had gotten away with it. He was wrong. He was just early. 1 week after Kim's case was announced, detectives received an anonymous tip. Someone who had known Peterson said that around the time Diana Hansen went missing, December 1983, Peterson had shown up with a brand new set of Walkman headphones, unexplained, unaccounted for. Diana Hansen's brother Kevin had gifted her that Walkman specifically for her jogging runs. It was hers. Peterson had kept it, the way some killers keep things, as something to carry with him from what he had done. Investigators requested a direct DNA comparison between Peterson's profile and the DNA recovered from Diana Hansen's body. It matched. Diana Hansen was 22 years old, a Clark High School graduate attending college in Texas. He was home in Las Vegas for the Christmas holidays on December 30, 1983, when she went out for her evening jog and never came back. Her body was found in the desert near Spring Mountain Road, not far from where Kim Bryant had been found 4 years earlier. Peterson had killed her the same way he killed Kim, a target of opportunity. A woman alone, the same desert, the same silence. Kim's case had reached across 42 years and solved the second murder in the same week it was announced. And behind Diana, police identified 5 more cold cases. All women, all sexually assaulted and killed in Las Vegas in the late 1970s and early 1980s, now under active review for Peterson's involvement. On November 29, 2021, Lieutenant Ray Spencer read a statement at a press conference from Edward Elliott, Kim's father. Kim was a beautiful girl with a bright future. It makes me happy that something is being done to help solve cases such as hers. Later, in a separate interview, Edward said what he actually felt, unfiltered, after 42 years of waiting. A 16-year-old girl. This SOB took her life and everything she had going for her. And then he said this: if he was alive and I'm 80 years old, he'd wish to hell he was never born. Edward Elliott got the name he had been waiting for. His wife Sherry did not. Kim's mother, the woman who wrote letters to police every year, who wrote to a newspaper that she could not buy her daughter a birthday cake, who drove the streets of Las Vegas the evening of January 26, 1979, because she already knew something was wrong, died in the summer of 2021. Months before the press conference, months before the name was found. She spent 42 years asking one question. The answer came too late. Kim Bryant was 16 years old. She was a Special Olympics volunteer. She had plans that afternoon, a shopping trip with her mother. She called her boyfriend from a payphone on a busy Las Vegas road and asked him to come get her, and then she stood there alone and waited, the way any teenager would. She deserved to grow up. The least she deserved was that someone eventually said his name out loud. On November 29, 2021, someone finally did. Sherry Elliott never got to hear it spoken. But maybe, in whatever place exists beyond this world, a mother and her daughter are finally, after 42 years, in the same room again, and maybe now Kim can rest. If this case stayed with you, and it should, I want to ask you 3 questions. First, do you think Peterson was one of the 2 men in that silver Chevy the morning Kim disappeared? The sketch matched his age, his look, his area. Police never confirmed it, but the question is still open. Second, if that 1980 rape arrest had led to a conviction and a DNA sample, how many of these cases might have been solved decades earlier? How many families spent 40 years waiting for an answer that a single dismissal took from them? Third, there are 5 more cold cases in Las Vegas right now, all similar victims, all from the same time period, all being reviewed for Peterson's involvement. If you were one of those families, would you want to know? Even now? Even this late? Drop your thoughts below. These families spent 42 years being heard by no one. The least we can do is keep talking.